I hope you are doing fantastic, and I hope you are staying warm in this wintry mix all over the world. Welcome to Michelle's Inspiration Hour. And I just hope that every episode brings you motivation and a little bit of hope, and most of all, inspiration. And I know that you're going to enjoy our next guest. But before I bring her out, as always, I want to quote something that I have either found on the website or on their Facebook page or Instagram page that I found that tells me that's one of their favorite quotes. And I really love this quote. It really made me think, but it's by Stephen Fry. And let me go ahead and read it. Oscar Wilde said that if you know what you want to be, then you inevitably become it. That is your punishment. But if you never know, then you can be anything. There's a truth to that. We are not nouns, we are verbs. I am not a thing, an actor, a writer. I am a person who does things. I write, I act, and I never know what I am going to do next. I think you can be imprisoned if you think of yourself as a noun. And I absolutely love that because it's like the mystery of life. Now, our guest, Ann Theato, has accomplished many things in her lifetime. So far, she has a lot longer to go. She is an international psychic medium, tutor, writer, and a podcast host. With over 37 years' experience, Ann teaches a wide variety of both psychic and spiritual workshops, programs, and classes in England, Scotland, and the Republic of Ireland, and the USA. Her workshops are designed to help you develop and trust in your own intuition, helping you to uncover your potential and revealing how psychic and spiritual development can truly transform your life. So I am so honored for her to be here. How are you, my dear?
Oh, Michelle, thank you. What a wonderful introduction. I'm fabulous. I'm so delighted to be here.
Oh, well, so am I. And you know what? I am so excited to learn all about you and about your life. And so, why don't you kind of tell us? I think it's so fascinating that you have always worked as a psychic medium. So, go ahead. Tell me. I
Well,
saw that hesitation.
yeah, I was like, "Ooh, right." Well, the interesting thing is, and that's such a great quote that you had at the beginning there from Stephen Fry, because um, when I started working professionally as a psychic medium, I sort of felt as if I then had to go along this path and just be a psychic medium. And I sort of used to think if we wore lots of different hats, people wouldn't really be able to understand who we were in the world. And we had to be one thing or another, and we couldn't be lots of different things. And when I first, because I'm an actor, that's my profession, that's my training, that's what I do. I'm a voice actor and a performer. That's me, and a writer. But
Oh, yeah.
when I started following being a psychic medium, I sort of thought I have to leave all that behind and just be a psychic medium now, because people won't be able to get into their heads that I'm more than one thing. And when I found that quote by Stephen Fry, I really thought, you know what? The expression of the soul is such that you can be many, many things, because the soul wants to express itself over and over again in so many different ways. And so now I am an actor, I am a voice actor, I am a professional psychic medium, I'm all of these things. And I love that. I just love that. And I think everybody should wear many, many hats.
Oh, absolutely. And that's how we all learn, right?
Yeah,
But it's, yeah,
absolutely.
whenever I looked at everything that you've done, I'm going, oh my gosh,
I know.
how do you have time for yourself?
Well, I know, I don't really. Well, I do actually. One of the things I've insisted upon in my own self is this year putting all my social engagements in my diary over and beyond anything else. My family holidays, my family time, my time away with my partner, all of those things come first, and then everything else slots in behind that. Mm.
Oh, absolutely love that. You have your priorities the way that it should be. Because,
Yeah.
as we all know, we get burned out even though we love to
Mm.
learn. Now, as a child, were you like an overachiever?
No, not at all. I was the daydreamer at the back of the class. I was the person who the teachers threw the board rubber at because back in the 80s you could throw things at children and it didn't matter. So they'd throw the board rubber at us, which of course was full of chalk dust. It would be splattered all over my school blazer because I was always daydreaming and off in my own little world. So no, I wasn't an overachiever at all. I did the bare minimum to get by.
I love that you said that the teacher threw things at you. Yeah, they
Oh,
can't get away with that these days anyway.
no.
But, and I found it interesting because a lot of psychic mediums that I have on the program, they are so creative.
Mm.
And so don't you think that has a little bit to do with how we become psychic mediums as well?
Say more about that. In what sense?
And the connection. Because do you think a lot of it has when you're a psychic medium, you're using a lot of your facilities
Mm.
as your imaginative mind versus the logical mind?
Yes, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I,
Yeah,
I I would agree with that most definitely. Yeah. Do you mean like when we go into meditation, you can imagine that that is kind of how it starts, a clairvoyance. Using your
right.
imagination to walk through the world. Let's say meditation, for instance. You can
Mhm.
imagine that waterfall, you can imagine that beautiful garden, and you can imagine a scene, an environment. You can begin to smell those flowers, hear the trickle of the fountain, etc., etc. And then when we use our clairvoyance, of course, we're almost transferring that imagination into those clairvoyant visions, those clairvoyant feelings, those clairvoyant senses. Mm.
Oh, and I totally agree because I think a lot of people will tend to, especially in the beginning of, enhancing your abilities. I think we tend to get that logic in there and think, you know what, that's not really what I'm thinking. That logic, your ego kind of gets in the way, and I think
Mm.
that imagination just really helps just embrace our intuitiveness.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I think the more that we can use our imagination, the better. And actually, it goes the other way. So when you are painting your picture,
Mhm.
creating your piece of music, writing your book, you can use your mediumship and your connection to your eternal soul to help channel the uh, artwork through you, channel the music through you, channel your writing through you. So yeah, I think it all comes from another place anyway, another
Yeah.
realm. We're just a tube with which the information comes through. Mm.
Oh, I totally agree on that. I think a lot of famous painters, artists, I think they are channeling and if they realize it or not, because they
Mm.
get so much information and so little time. But when you were younger, did you have the support of your family of becoming a psychic medium? I mean, how did you exactly tell people, you know what, I'm, feeling like I need to do this? So how did your journey, begin?
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't have the support of my family. I suppose I was too frightened to tell them I was seeing shadow people, or I knew things ahead of time. I could predict who I was going to see on the way to school, for instance. I could predict football scores. I could predict the sports, this and that and the other. So there was that. I had one of my brothers I was very, very close to when I was younger. And we used to talk often about this feeling of sitting behind our eyes as if we were another being within this physical self. I remember those conversations as a young child with him, how we would feel that we weren't part of this world. So that was all quite interesting. I sort of knew, so I had a small outlet with him, but with my parents, no, very strict Catholic family, and those sort of things just weren't discussed. Not much was discussed really. It was all quite it's quite strict childhood. Uh, yes, I didn't tend to do that. I bought my first tarot cards when I was 17, and then I left home when I was 18. So my spirituality started to grow probably from the age of 18 when I was reading tarot all the time for people. Anybody who would sit with me, I'd read tarot for them. And that's where it started, at that age when I started to take things very seriously. But before that, it was, yeah, just coming in then.
I absolutely love that. And, you embraced it and you decide, a lot of people are afraid of it. So, what do you tell people that come to you and they go, I don't exactly know what to do with this? I'm scared. I'm afraid. Where should I start? Where should I begin?
Yeah. Um, what do I tell people? Well, not to be frightened of it. It's the psychic side of us, the mediumistic side of us is so natural. It's who we are. It's our eternal, it's my belief. Let's put it that way. It's my experience, it's my truth, and it's my belief. It may not be everybody's, but it's mine. And so if they come to me for advice, I can only speak from my experience. And I would say we are an eternal soul. We existed way before this physical body. We'll exist way long, for many,
Mhm.
however long after this physical body has died away and gone, and we are a thing of the past. And so, therefore, everything that we can pick up with our psychic senses and our mediumistic side is so natural. It's nothing to be frightened of. I would often speak about the beautiful horror writers, the wonderful cinematography for horror stories. I mean, that's in itself tapping into another realm to get these beautiful ideas. But they're just a story belonging to somebody else. That is not the truth. And we don't have teachers who teach us what the truth is. We have to learn from the things that we read, and we make assumptions and we wonder if that's true, or we get scared because we watch a horror movie on the telly where something comes out of the mirror and attacks us. But that's not the truth. That's just wonderful storytelling. The truth is something gentle and soft and beautiful and loving. That's what the truth of it is, in my experience. Mm.
Oh, I love it. And I know that, a lot of times people don't realize that when we know that we have the psychic ability, that, it really helps if you find a teacher, a spiritual teacher, spiritual leader to help you tune into these gifts. So when, a lot of people are surprised to go, well, I thought it would be coming naturally. It's like, no, I feel better. And to me, I feel stronger every time I take a class. So I know that you teach classes, but where did you go when you first began your training?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Michelle. And it's really important to get the right teachers. And anybody listening or watching should review and have a look at and consider many different teachers and go with the one they feel drawn to most, I would say. For me, I didn't have any tuition. I needed tuition, but I couldn't afford any tuition. Then I had children, and I needed tuition even more because my house started to have all kinds of spirit people coming in at that time in my very early 30s, and I didn't know what was going on. I wasn't frightened. Again, it was quite natural for me to see spirit people all the time. I've seen them all my life. But the nervous thing for me was I had children and I wanted to support them if they started to see what I was seeing. So what happened was I somehow got escaped from my children and went to the pub for a night out. I don't know how it happened because I was a single parent and I never went outside the door. But this one particular evening I was away and just up the road, and somebody came up to me. A random man came up to me and said, "You are a medium and you should get some training." And I said, "How do you know I'm a medium?" And he just said, "I just sense it from you." It was the strangest thing. I mean, nobody goes up to anybody in a pub and says something like that. Usually they say,
Exactly.
Can I buy a drink, love?" So that was very interesting. He said, "Go and see a gentleman called Tony Stockwell. That's who I recommend." So had never heard of Tony Stockwell in my life. And so it's a bit of a long story, so I keep it very short. What happened was I looked up Tony. I found out he was a professional psychic medium, been on the TV and all those things. And I went to see if I could get a booking with him at the College of Psychic Studies, but he was fully booked for 6 months. So I went to an open day at the College of Psychic Studies, and one of the prizes in the raffle was a private reading with Tony Stockwell. There were 8 prizes. I bought a ticket. All the prizes had gone. My ticket was the last one. It was called out of the bag. The gift that I was given as my reward for the raffle ticket was a private reading with Tony Stockwell. I went and saw Tony. I mean, it's outrageous. It was kind of crazy. And he said to me, "I see you here. I see you in this place, the College of Psychic Studies. And I see you doing this work." And once I had that sort of affirmation from him, he gave me some advice as well. And then I started to train with him because I liked him, and I felt safe around his teachings. So I used to travel as and when I could to see him. And interestingly, 20 years later, I have now become a tutor at the College of Psychic Studies. So that was really interesting that he saw that for me. So I've learnt with Tony, and actually now I'm his assistant. I actually work for him as his assistant. Yeah, so it's really strange, isn't it, how things pan out?
And it's no
Yeah,
coincidence. I mean, I think
yeah,
it was meant to be, and spirit kind of nudged you along the way
yeah,
and knew that you were needing that teacher at that time. So yeah,
yeah.
Tony is very well known. So that is just fabulous. So share with us what you teach.
So I teach mediumship, I teach psychic skills, I teach scrying, psychometry. I'm currently teaching a mentorship program in remote viewing. So I'm absolutely fascinated by the psychic mind. And all of this time up until this point, I've been doing one-to-one readings whereby, of course, people come for guidance. They come for guidance on their life, or they come to speak to me to speak to somebody in the spirit world whom they've loved and they would like to be reconnected with. So I've been doing all that. I've also trained in past life regression. So sometimes people come to me for past life regression, or a new thing that I've created, which is, I don't really know what to call it. I call it time travel at the moment, but I really need to find a different word. But it's where I can take them in hypnosis to meet their loved ones in the spirit world. And that's really powerful and really beautiful. But all of those things so far is all about helping people with messages. But where my work seems to be taking me now is in pushing forward the boundaries of consciousness for the benefit of humanity. That's what I'm really fascinated by. And that's why I want to. I mean, I'm training all the time. I know
Yes.
I've reached a certain level, but I think all of us still need to learn and train and expand the knowledge. So I'm very much training with my psychic mind at the moment. Yeah.
And I think it's very fascinating, but that you do want to learn, because what you're doing is you're educating others.
Mm.
Because I think, the spiritual world and being psychic medium, I think the more research, the more things that we look into and we learn, it's going to be common knowledge. And like
Yeah,
you
it will
said,
be.
it won't be afraid of anymore, because I know there's a lot of research that is going on about psychic mediums and their brains and how things work. And to me, that is just all fascinating,
Yeah,
So, yes.
absolutely, Michelle. And I think that's really
Yeah.
prevalent at the moment. Science has proven extrasensory perception
Mm.
already. So we don't have to keep going over and over and trying to prove that there is such a thing as a psychic mind, because it's been proven now by science. With mediumship, perhaps not quite yet proven, but there are a lot of experiments going on at the moment where the scientists and physicists and people like that are working with mediums to find out how the brain changes, the brain patterns and the electric impulses that go through the brain, how that changes. I don't quite know what they're doing, but it's something along those lines.
Right.
And
No, I
hopefully we'll
understand.
get to a point where it can be,
Yes. Yes.
proven.
And I think a lot of people that don't want to come out and say, I am a psychic medium, I'm seeing things, that, I mean, your work is creating that pathway for them.
Yeah.
So I think your work is so important.
Yeah,
So
thanks.
let's
It
go ahead and talk.
really is.
Can we talk about some other work that you've done before?
Sure, sure.
I do want to talk because I think you're so fascinating. I could talk to you all day
Thanks.
about everything that you've done. But the one thing that you
Aw.
did, and I just being a teacher and educator, I love that you actually wrote a child's book, and I know that was a part of a series at one time, and you wrote for this series.
That's right.
Can you kind of explain what kind of led you to write this book and what's the inspiration behind it?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So this is Bertie's new front door. It's part of a series of books called Bertie, the Beach Hut and Friends. And I was invited by two beautiful ladies, Jane Ayers and Jane Ashmore. And they had a beach hut company in a little place called Mersey Island, just outside Colchester. And they had an idea for a television series. And they have these different beach huts that they decorated so beautifully. And each beach hut, they told me, had a different personality. So um, and they'd won awards for their beautiful beach huts, etc., etc. So they had this great idea for a children's television series, and they asked me if I would write it for them. So I wrote the pilot episode, and I wrote a television series, and I wrote what they call a Bible for that TV series, which contains all the characters, all the pictures of all the people that are in the TV series, and they gave me an idea which was this big, and of course I fleshed it out into all the different characters that were coming in and the personalities and the different things that would happen. And I gave Bertie his little sidekick Philippe, the broken flip-flop, who's a non-able-bodied character within the story. And so it's about the friendship between Bertie and Philippe, and it's about looking after the planet and the environment. And in order to make it into a television series, you have to show a following, you see. So therefore, I had to then write a book which
Ah,
would show that there was then a following. Once the television companies know there's a following, then there's a potential for the television series. So I'm just working on that at the moment. So if anybody's listening and they like the idea of my wonderful television series, please do get in contact with me. But it's a beautiful little book series, and I am actually about to put some more effort and work into it and write some more in the series very soon. But I've got other children's books that I'm writing as well, so
oh, oh,
they're
can
all
you kind of
coming up.
tell us a little bit about that, or
Yeah, I
or
can. I
is
can
it kind
tell
of
you
a
a little bit.
secret?
No, not
Okay.
really. Not so much of a secret.
Okay.
There's just three little books that I'm working on for children, because I don't think there's many spiritual books for children. I'm absolutely passionate about supporting children with their spiritual development, and so I've got a book which I'm working on, which is called Little Seeds and Their Needs. So it's just a little spirituality series for children. And I'm working on another one called Homulus Homunculus, who's a little boy who lives in Greece way back when. And he
Mm.
talks about the genius who lives in the wall. And so that's that. And then I've got another one called The Weasel and the Easel, which is a really beautiful little story. And the
Mm.
weasel paints these little pictures, but he doesn't paint scenes of the seaside or anything like that. He paints the wind and he paints his feelings.
Oh,
And it's a little bit about channeling what we spoke about earlier, channeling
ah.
your through mediumship through your creative process, I suppose, whatever that is. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, see, that is wonderful. Again, what you are doing is going to really help the kids out and find a book that they can read and go, "Oh
Mm,
my gosh, I am not alone in the world. This is
yeah.
awesome. I know what's going on now." Okay,
Yeah.
and then we have to talk about your podcast, Psychic Matters. And how many years have you been doing that?
Thank you, Michelle, for mentioning that. That's very kind of you.
Oh,
Well,
absolutely.
do you know what? In February, it will be 3 years that I've been producing the Psychic Matters podcast. And it's done very, very well in those 3 years. Thank you for asking. Yeah. And I love doing it. I bring it out every 2 weeks. And I think the reason that I started it, well, I don't think, I know the reason that I started it was because when as I spoke earlier about being a single
Mhm.
parent on my own with children, not having any finance. There was no internet then. You couldn't join an online class. There was no such thing. You had to physically go in person, pay for your travel, pay for your accommodation, pay for the course. It was
Oh,
just,
wow. Yeah.
couldn't do that back in the day. So I'm passionate about supporting people across the world who may not be able to get to a class. And there are so many people in different countries who don't have spiritualist churches. They don't have the Arthur
Mm.
Findlay College up the road. They don't have a local development circle to attend, but they are in a situation like I was, seeing shadow people, can predict the future, have no one to talk to, because a lot of us in this world and on this path have very few normal people around. Normal,
Yeah.
our families and our friends, they don't follow that path. We feel
Right.
sort of isolated. So I wanted a place that people could learn for free, that costs them nothing, that they can listen to. And so I produce my own podcast with my own teaching, but I also interview experts across the globe to get their wisdom, their advice, their spiritual wealth, which I then pass on to others. And you, Michelle, were on my podcast recently. You did a beautiful episode with me about psychic children, and that was absolutely fascinating. So thank you so much for being a
Oh.
guest on that. It was just fantastic. Yeah.
Oh, my pleasure. And I had a fantastic time, and I think the talk was just awesome. I think the conversation,
Mm.
and you asked some very good questions. You're a great host.
Thank you.
And I have gone back and listened to other podcasts, your podcast about different subjects in the metaphysical world, and you do such a great job teaching. It's not boring. It just, you keep everybody attention. It's like, oh, what is she going to talk about next? And plus, you have the voice for it.
Yeah, I am blessed in that way, Michelle. I must say, there's something about my voice. It is a gift, a God-given gift, that I just do
Absolutely.
happen to have a very nice speaking voice. Somehow it lands gently on people's ears, which is wonderful, and that does help, I think, for
I guess
sure.
you didn't grow up in Texas, did you?
No.
Have that little Southern accent.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we do the last question of the hour, um, what inspiration can you get? And it can be any type of inspiration that you want to tell people. So, what inspiration would you have for anybody?
What inspiration?
Uh-huh.
Ooh, that's a wide question, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
What would I tell people? You know what? Follow your dreams. That's the key thing in this world. We're so funneled into working for this person, working for that person, feeling we have to go a certain way. Perhaps our parents have an expectation on us. And even though we're the age we are now, somehow that expectation is hard to shift. It's hard to shift that we're, we're meant to. Society tells us we're meant to achieve, accomplish, we must succeed. What does all that mean? Well, you know what that means? That means following somebody else's dream for you. It's nothing to do with you. If you look around any cemetery, there are many people who are now dead and gone, but their ideas and their think rules that they laid out somehow still exist around us, and we need to let all of that go. We must follow our own path, our own dream. Sit with yourself, feel what bubbles up for you from your solar plexus. What are you here to do? What is your passion? And go and follow that. Now, sometimes you can't because you have a family, you have children, you have to pay the rent, the mortgage, things like that. However, you can always bring it in some small way. So, say for instance, I have a passion for horses and horse riding. All I want to do is own 2 horses and just ride them all day long. I haven't ridden a horse for 5 years actually, but you can bring things in um, for someone like me who's got this passion for horses. I haven't ridden one, but I do intend to. Actually, in a couple of weeks, I'm going back to the stables to ride every fortnight. While I haven't been riding over the past 5 years, I follow things on the internet. I draw horses to get their shape. I read about them. I read about the nature of them. So they never really left my arena of passion, if you like. So I think there's always something we can do to bring something in. And tell you something, one last thing. If you don't follow your dreams, someone will hire you to make their dreams come true.
Oh, wow. That is awesome. The wise words from Anne.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. All right, let's go ahead into the last question. We're going to learn a little bit more about you. All right, let me spin it. Let's see.
This is so exciting.
Do you feel like you're in school again? Oh.
Oh, favorite book.
Favorite book.
Ooh,
This is
goodness,
perfect for you.
there's so many. There's so many. Okay, my favorite book has got to be, gosh, I hope I remember the author, Hatter's Castle by A.J. Cronin, Cronin, Hatter's Castle. And it was, it's been many, many years since I read it, so I can't
Yeah.
really summarize it for you properly, but it was about a hatter, guy who made hats, way, way back in the day. And I just remember some of the descriptions in that book. The hatter was this big, burly man, and he was trying to lay down his rules and his regulations for his poor little henpecked wife. And his mother in law lived with them. And he had this beautiful, the author had, A.J. Cronin had these beautiful descriptions of this poor old grandmother with no teeth trying to suck the juice out of the piece of a chicken leg. And it was his disgust at her being so old and living with them, and this sort of sound that he was describing. And the hatter was trying to be all blustery and say that he knew everything about the world, and he'd read this newspaper, but he couldn't really read, he couldn't really take in intellectually. He wasn't able to keep up with his own bluster, if you see what I mean. It was such a beautiful, I think it was the descriptions in that book. Descriptive writing is just something else. Paul Gallico's another writer who can just write these most beautiful descriptions. So yeah, that was probably my
Oh my
most
gosh.
favorite book ever.
Well, thank you so much for sharing everything that you did with us. Again, every day you're making the world a better place.
Oh, thank you
Where
so
can they?
much.
Oh, where can they find you?
Yeah, so my website has, excuse me, I just need to cough.
Oh yeah,
Little bit of
no.
residual COVID there. My website has everything. Anne Theato, ANNTHEATO.com. It's got my podcasts on there you can listen to. It's got all my courses and events. If you want to sign up for my remote viewing or my development circle or anything like that, it's all on there, along with I don't know what else is on there. I'm not sure. A blog.
I know
I got a
you're doing
blog
so
on there.
much, right?
Yeah, I am doing quite a lot. Oh, and I recently opened a merchandise shop to go alongside the
Oh my
podcast as well.
gosh.
So you can buy t-shirts and hoodies and things like that on there. All
Of
to do
course
with
you
psychic.
did.
Of course, why not? Well, in my spare time, right?
I think that is lovely, lovely, lovely. Well, thank you so much. So I'm going to actually share another quote from you. You want to stay and listen to that quote the other quote that I want to share, the ending one?
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. So, wrong paper.
That's
Let me
okay.
get the right one. Okay, this is and I really found, and I thought this was so good. And talking about COVID and about, the world kind of, trying to find inspiration. It's called The Peace of Wild Things by Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's life may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake, rest in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of the wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day blind stars waiting with their light for a time. I rest in the grace of the world and am free. So, everybody, I hope that you found this wonderful inspiration. And I hope that you see the hope in the world and know that people are changing it every day. We'll see you next time. Bye.